Patients will not eat. They knock out their teeth and force a tube down their throats.
And here?
Watch. The mouth is opened just wide enough to deposit food, and no harm is done.
Do you not use the straight waistcoat?
Rarely. Wherever possible, we encourage our patients to govern their own behavior. For them, confinement in a straight waistcoat is a mark of shame. It is the shame that becomes the restraint.
Not irons and shackles.
Friend Higgins, I most earnestly believe that when a patient is violent, the cause may as readily be traced to his treatment as to his disorder. I've seen this for myself. The desire for esteem is more powerful than irons or shackles.
But surely, sir, there are some who are not able to control themselves.
What we find answers here, friend, is to divide our patients into classes, separating the violent from the more peaceful. It soon becomes clear to them that treatment depends on conduct alone. Then the more violent try to follow the example of the quieter brethren.
You yourself are not a medical man, Mr. Tuke.
No, but a physician calls regularly. In the eyes of the world, Dr. Best may be qualified, but does it benefit the souls in his care? Richard here has been with us for 3 years. Before that, he spent 2 years in a madhouse, shackled to the wall. Thank you, Richard. The intellectual and moral powers of the insane are not destroyed, merely disturbed. If they are treated with respect and discipline, many return to themselves. And should it not be so? If oppression makes a wise man mad, could beatings and insults and injuries, for which the receiver knows no cause, be calculated to make a madman wise?
Those who set up the York Retreat very much emphasized, and they called it moral therapy, the importance of moral treatment, treating people as moral agents. That meant treating people kindly, rationally, in a supportive way. They were meant to be emotional bonds that bound together the patients and the servants, the attendants, the doctors and the managers. There was a great deal of emphasis upon therapeutic activities like gardening, like taking walks, like shared tea table conversation. It was meant to be a place where the mad would relearn the skills of civilized and Christian life.
In 1813, shortly before he met Godfrey Higgins, Samuel Tuke had written the first inside account of the running of a lunatic asylum. A description of the retreat was both a practical management guide and a manifesto for moral treatment. But though the approach was radical, it was still very different from modern psychiatry.
It wasn't a talking cure. They weren't being put on the couch and psychoanalyzed. Their memories, their unconscious thoughts weren't being scrutinized. I think on the whole the Quakers would have thought that too intrusive. There was a strong feeling at the time that you didn't really ask the mad about the sources of their craziness, because that would only encourage them.
I think moral treatment, in a sense, comes over as a rather woolly sort of concept in which everybody is kind, everybody is humane, and everybody's on their best behaviour. And one wonders whether the reality was rather more coercive than that. I think looking at it from the outside as a non-Quaker historian, one might very easily detect a more disciplinary element than the Quaker patients themselves would have perceived, insofar as they were very used to a very strong Quaker disciplinary code which governed just about every aspect of their lives, from having to wear a special form of dress and so on.
The publication of the description of the retreat had been met with general acclaim, but there were some who disagreed. Dr. Best, for example, who regarded it as an attack on the asylum.
And what does Dr. Best think of your method?
He has no very high opinion of us. The asylum is run on somewhat different principles.
He has instituted no reforms whatever?
None.
His charges are virtual prisoners, defenseless, without representation, Dr. Best is their sole physician, sole visitor, sole committee. It is an outrage. I am disgusted that he should live in the world with the character of an honourable man.
And there are the governors also. They attend quarterly meetings, but no changes follow.
It is time some did. Dr. Best thinks that you and I form a conspiracy.
Conspiracy? Against the asylum?
Perhaps a conspiracy is just what is needed.
Tuke and Higgins set out to expose the asylum and Dr. Best. The conspiracy began with the gathering of evidence.
Letter to Samuel Tuke. I hear the cook at the asylum can tell something about the young women patients, if we could get at her anyway. I'm pretty certain there is a secret there if we could but get at it. The men servants at the asylum, by means of their keys, can at all times admit themselves into the lodging rooms of the female patients. It is not the mad who have no shame, but those charged with their care.
Letter to Godfrey Higgings. I have heard of a man patient found without any clothes whatever standing in the washhouse. The patient was apparently in the last stage of atrophy. His attendant was busy killing pigs. The patient possessed but one shirt. Dr. Best said he had power to order wine for a patient, but not a flannel jacket.
Mrs. Wilson has stated to me that her husband's linen has several times been sent home from the asylum, streaked with blood. I wish, when you have time, you would write me a list of the governors, distinguishing friends from foes, and putting the business or station in life of each individual opposite his name.
When Higgins started to raise complaints about the state of the York Asylum, it was interesting that the response of the hospital authorities and of Dr. Best initially was not at all to concede the truth of his allegations. Rather, what emerged over the succeeding weeks and months was a prolonged warfare almost in the press in the form of pamphlets written often anonymously, with one side calling itself, for instance, corrector and another evigilator.
As the campaign intensified, so did the seriousness of the accusations. In an open letter to the Lord Lieutenant of the West Riding, Higgins accused Best of stealing money from pauper patients to subsidise his private practice.
Really, this furious pamphlet war, which continued for some months, kept the whole issue before the public, roused more and more controversy, and in a way, something that Higgins and his allies couldn't have anticipated at the outset, the very refusal of the authorities to concede the defects at the outset helped to stimulate public interest and, in the long run, to help the reformers make their case.
The allegations grew more sinister still when Higgins published evidence of a cover-up of deaths at the asylum.
According to the asylum, the deaths there within the year ending June 1813 appear to be 11. But upon examining the register of the parish church of St. Olave's, I found that either 18 or 19 from the asylum had been buried in that churchyard alone in that year. I believe that the concealment of the deaths was not the effect of mistake, but of preconcerted design and regular system. I take the liberty of stating that it appears to me that a much greater mortality has taken place in the asylum than in that excellent institution, the Quakers' Retreat.
Best continued to deny all allegations. Higgins and Tuke decided to storm the asylum from within.
They decided together that the only way to reform the asylum was to become governors. And they managed to do this when they discovered that anybody who subscribed £20 to the asylum became a governor. So they packed the next governor's meeting, and a committee of investigation was set up.
But before the committee could meet, on the night of December 26th, a mysterious